History: 70-year-old male, abnormal movements of left side of body, upper limb, lower limb, and face for 4 days.
So what are the possibilities you will consider in this patient?
Normal movements means it can be a seizure, it can be a balismus or hemibalismus, and chorea, athetotic movement.
Quite good. So
Can be
there are can be.
myoclonus or tics also.
Hmm. Okay. So we have a couple of differential diagnoses to offer.
Yes.
So what extra points you would like to know to find out if there is a seizure or not?
So we would like to hear the history, whether the onset of the abnormal movement, the duration with the movements last, then any prodrome syndromes are there, symptoms are there or not. Then we would also like to know whether the patient lost consciousness, there is history of loss of consciousness or not. Then there is any abnormal, urinary incontinence is there or not. Then uh, frothing from the mouth. Then after postictal, there is in post episode, whether there is any residual paralysis or not, whether there is any loss of memory, or in or previously any history of any fever, or
Okay. Then you give some other differential diagnosis also. How will you arrive at that diagnosis? You said balismus, chorea, and athetosis. So what history you would like to elicit on those patients?
in chorea can be, it can occur in patients with rheumatic fever also. I would like to ask whether there is a history of any sore throat, fever with sore throat, or any
Okay. What is the usual age group of rheumatic fever patients?
around adolescents, up to 15 years, sir.
Okay, he's 70 years old.
Yes, sir. So that is unlikely.
Unlikely, right? And which part of the limb will be having this chorea?
Will be distal part of the
Distal part. And how fast the movements are? Slow or fast?
chorea will be slow breathing movement, sir.
It is not like that. Chorea is very fast, abrupt movements, just like Bharatanatyam, and athetosis is a slow writhing movement, just like Mohiniyattam. Okay. So, what about balismus?
Balismus will be like dancing movements, flailing movements. And that is good.
Balismus will be very violent flinging movement of proximal parts. Okay, fair enough. So, let us move forward.
Past history. Type 2 DM, uncontrolled type 2 DM, type 2 diabetes mellitus, peripheral neuropathy. Then there is hypertension, COPD, type 2 respiratory failure, on LTOT.
Okay, so can you tell me something about LTO2? What are the common indications for giving LTOT? You know what is LTOT? Long-term oxygen therapy, domiciliary oxygen.
Sir, it can be in COPD. The patient need long-term oxygen therapy. In home also, domiciliary oxygen चाहिए. It is needed. And in bronchiectasis, in case of bronchiectasis also. Then
how do you select a patient with COPD for LTO2? What's the criteria you adopt?
Sir, if the saturation, oxygen saturation can be maintained within 88 up to 89 to 90%. If the oxygen, then domiciliary oxygen is advisable in at least 4 hours continuously oxygen.
So the resting PO2 less than 55 or resting SpO2 less than 88 is taken as criteria. And people with pulmonary hypertension, right heart failure or polycythemia, there's slight difference. It is the PO2 59 and SpO2 89. And what is your target values?
SpO2 should be 89%, 89 to 90%.
90 to 92. And PO2 60 to 65. That is our usual targeted value. So what are the hazards of giving oxygen at home?
Patient may not, cost is one thing, sir. Patient may not be able to afford it all the time. So complaints will be less, and it is for it ambulation. It is day-to-day activities carry out will also be a problem, sir. And at least 4 hours continuous oxygen supply should be there. So power failure and if it is not continuously taken, then if it compliance is less, then it is not of much use.
Oxygen is basically an inflammable gas. So if you strike a matchstick at that scenario, there may be burns. That's one important point. Number 2 is we have what is called as oxygen concentrators. It's quite cheap, and you can use it for this purpose. How does this LTO2 help you?
We can patient can move around without less hospital admissions can be reduced.
The LTO2 basic principle is hypoxia produces vasoconstriction, thereby producing pulmonary hypertension. So to avoid that, you are giving oxygen. And to make the patient comfortable daytime, you can give 14 hours at night itself. So he may be able to do his routine activities, and night when he goes to bed early, he can start on that. So that's always another option. Okay, let's move forward. Examination findings.
Examination, there is pallor present, vitals are stable, involuntary, irregular, semi-purposeful movements of left upper limb, lower limb, grimacing movements of left side of face. So semi-purposeful, involuntary, irregular, semi-purposeful movements. So it can be and grimacing movements of left side of face. So athetotic movement, it's less likely to be a seizure, sir.
So which involuntary movement do you suspect in this patient?
Sir, athetosis.
Athetosis is usually repetitive same movement. Here it is involuntary semi-purposeful movement, and it's quite jerky in nature.
Sir, chorea.
Chorea only one half.
Hemibalismus.
Is there anything called hemichorea?
Hemichorea.
Is there something like that?
One half is in there.
Okay. So let us see what is happening. So what do you make out of that?
Sir, he's left side irregular movement head and irregular involuntary movements, sir. And this is only on one half. So chorea, hemichorea.
And the further findings are like this.
Nervous system, hypotonia on the left side. Power is 5/5, bilateral upper and lower limbs. Reflexes are present bilaterally. Sensory system is normal. Cerebellar signs are not elicited. Romberg's not tested. No neck stiffness. No spinal tenderness.
So tell me definition of tone.
Sir, it is a resistance felt. It is a resistance offered by the muscle at the in the resisting state, and it is the resistance we feel while doing passive movements of the limbs.
So tell me few causes for hypotonia.
Hypertonia in human lesion, there will be hypertonia, so spasticity will be there.
No, hypotonia.
Hypotonia in cerebellar lesions, there will be hypotonia. Then in element lesion, in neuronal shock.
Can you tell me one situation where there is involved of basal ganglia, but hypotonia is manifested?
Sir, Parkinsonism, sir.
Parkinsonism, do you get hypotonia?
Oh no, it is no hypotonia. Rigidity will be there.
So, which condition there is involvement of the extrapyramidal system, but hypotonia is seen? This is classical chorea. Okay. Respiratory system examination, this is what you are getting.
Respiratory system examination, bilateral occasional V's present, Krebs is also present, cardiovascular system is within normal limits, and GIT is also within normal limits.
So what are the investigations you plan in this patient?
So we will go for a chest X-ray and chest X-ray and one CT thorax also, because the patient is having a non-case of COPD, and so we will go for one chest X-ray first, and since he is having abnormal movements, we will go for one EEG and also an MRI also, sir.
The EEG commonly we do for epilepsy seizure activity. There is no seizures, obviously. Okay. It may not be helpful. So in a COPD patients, commonly we go for X-ray chest, we can go for ECG, then we have to do pulmonary function test and ABG. That's how we go for further. So when there's a neurological problem, you have to go for imaging.
MRI.
So these are the values we got when we investigated. It's a diabetic patient, we already told you.
GRBS is 544 milligram per deciliter. ABG is normal. Urine acetone is negative. HbA1c is 17.6. CBC total count is 11,000. Of this, 87% is neutrophil and 15% lymphocytes. Blood urea is 34 milligram per deciliter. Serum creatinine is 1.4 milligram per deciliter. Sodium is 142 milliequivalents per deciliter, and potassium is 3.7 milliequivalent per deciliter. Of this, sir, his blood sugars are uncontrolled, but not in ketoacidosis because urine acetone is negative.
Very good.
And ABG is normal, and so which means there is ABG normal, no acidos, hypercarbia and hypoxia are not there. So, and HbA1c is 17.6. So, long-term control of sugar is also poor, sir.
Very good. Very good.
And total count is within the normal range, sir. But blood urea also 34 limits, and creatinine is 1.4, slightly raised. Maybe because of the long-term uncontrolled sugar, kidney function might be affected. Then sodium and potassium is also in the normal limits, sir.
What is the criteria to diagnose diabetic ketoacidosis?
The sugar should be more than 200 milligram per deciliter, and there should be urine acetone should be positive, and ABG will show metabolic acidosis there.
So you must have 4 criteria. Blood glucose must be more than 250. Your plasma acetone must be positive in more than 1:2 dilution. You must be able to demonstrate the pH is low, and you must be able to demonstrate the bicarb is less than 15. So these are the 4 criteria we adopt commonly. That is not here, so it is not ketoacidosis. Can this be hyperosmolar state?
It can be, sir. But yeah, the osmotic serum osmolarity will also, in ABG is normal, so with 544, yes, it should, osmolarity will be high, but we have to calculate the serum osmolarity.
How to calculate? Two multiplied by sodium plus potassium, that's around 145, so it is 290, plus we have GRBS 5544, so divided by 18, approximately 27. So you have already got 142, 145, 290 plus 30.
Yeah.
So it will be coming to 325. Plus we have urea divided by 18. No, urea divided by 2.8. So it will also be high. So this be approximately about 320, it seems. So it can be called as a hyperosmolar state.
Hyperosmolar state.
You have to calculate and tell us whether it is a hyperosmolar state or not. How does a hyperosmolar non-ketotic state present usually?
Patient will be disoriented, can present in coma also. Patient will be, tongue will be dry, patient will be drowsy or in coma. The urine output will be less.
A lot of involuntary movements, particularly seizures, are expected, and chorea and ketosis are also expected in this group of patients. So you said imaging. Why do you want to do imaging in chorea patients?
Abnormal discharges from the basal ganglia.
No, not EEG. Imaging.
Imaging to rule out any cerebrovascular accidents, sir. In CT, if to rule out any bleeding or any acute infarct also, sir. So if the in case of infarct or in case of if it is cerebrovascular accident involving the basal ganglia, then also such involuntary movements can present, sir. Since his age is 70 years and non-case of hypertension, diabetes may be possible, might be because of some, but there is no history of any paralysis. The other neurological examination are all normal, so it is unlikely to be CVA.
So any other reason why you are doing imaging? There are other causes for chorea, no?
Sir, if any cranial space occupying lesion.
So let us consider one by one. Huntington's disease. What do you expect to find in imaging? Where is the pathology in Huntington's disease? Basically, it is the atrophy of caudate nucleus. You can see the caudate nucleus in the CT, and you can immediately say it is atrophied, and it is, instead of convexity inwards, it will be convexity outwards. And spinocerebellar ataxias, what will you find? Commonly you find cerebellar atrophy. And which are the conditions where you get basal ganglia abnormalities?
Mason's disease, and then
liver diseases, hyperglycemia as we are describing, acanthocytosis, neuroacanthocytosis. What is an acanthocyte?
Acanthocyte, in peripheral blood smear.
RBCs, the spikes on the wall of the RBC. Very good, very good. Toxoplasma, what do you expect to find?
That will be white leuco.
you find toxoplasma ring-shaped, enhancing lesions of toxoplasma, and progressive multifocal leukoencephalopathy, you find white matter changes. So this imaging is very helpful and useful in case of these patients. So we have a patient with peripheral vascular disease, hypertension, diabetes, peripheral neuropathy, LTO2 on, and the COPD is there, it's uncontrolled diabetic state, and involuntary movement. What's your final diagnosis?
Sir, hyperosmolar hyperglycemic state with the with hemichoria.
Okay, so we have a patient with type 2 diabetes, hyperosmolar state with the hemichoria, hemibalismus syndrome. Actually, examination of this patient revealed very violent flinging movement of the shoulders. So that's why I thought it can be combination of the two. Peripheral vascular disease, COPD, type 2 respiratory failure, and he was on LTO2. Okay, so what are the involuntary movements you expect in a diabetic patient?
If it is, it can be a seizure also in hypoglycemia state. If the patient goes in hypoglycemia, it can present a seizure. Then, as in this case, hemichoria and hemibalismus in like involuntary movements in hyperosmotic hyper states. Then,
okay, what is chorea?
Chorea is a rapid, semi-purposeful, irregular, involuntary movements, like dancing-like movement.
What is the common cause of chorea?
Huntington's disease, then rheumatic fever, and Wilson's disease, the spinocerebellar ataxia.
So, can you tell some hereditary diseases? You said Huntington's disease. What type of hereditary pattern is that?
CAG repeats triple. CAG repeats, sir.
Autosomal?
Autosomal recessive and dominant.
Dominant. So, what is meant by anticipation?
Sir, in it is, since it is autosomal dominance, which means if the father it can be transmitted from father to son. So if in case of in genetic testing, we are anticipating that there is 50% chance of that offspring to get the disease, sir.
Anticipation means subsequent generations the disease manifests at a younger age. So, give an example of neurodegenerative problem. Spinocerebellar ataxia. Structural damage or vascular problems. Autoimmune diseases.
Metabolic.
Rheumatic fever, it's also autoimmune. Metabolic cause. All electrolyte abnormalities. Wilson's disease. Thyrotoxicosis. Drugs, wide variety of them. Hormonal, OCPs and thyrotoxicosis. So we have very many causes for chorea. Okay, so what is your aim when you approach a patient of chorea?
Find the confirm whether it is chorea or not. Then find the reason for cause.
That's right. You want to know that the primary idiopathic variety or secondary treatable cause. So you are looking for reversible causes. Okay. So how will you confirm a hereditary cause? Genetic cause.
Genetic study.
Genetic study is available. Very good.
Also,
very good.
And also, sir, by asking whether in family tree pedigree analysis, if the family members will have. Because in Huntington's chorea also it is autosomal dominant, so someone in the family will be also having the same.
So basically we want to know whether it is a treatable disease or non-treatable disease, and if there are any reversible factors that you can go ahead with. So chorea can be differentiated or mixed with other involuntary movements. What are they?
Chorea, athetosis, then valismus, hemivalismus.
So there is a spectrum. Sometimes there will be a combination of chorea athetosis, chorea with valismus. Hemichorea with valismus is a combination in our patient. So as you know, chorea is a distal thing. Rapid movement can affect the face, trunk, and distally. It's an unpredictable business. Chorea is an unpredictable thing. The variable speed and variable timing and variable direction. And it can mix with athetosis and valismus also. Athetosis on the other hand, as we said, Mohiniyattam, just remember, slow, writhing, sinuous, distal movement. And it keeps on repeating the same movement. Not like chorea where everything changes from time to time. Hemivalismus is a proximal problem, not a distal problem. Other two we said is a distal problem, and it's a very large amplitude, very flinging and kicking movement. When you find hemivalismus in an elderly person, vascular cause is the first thing you suspect. So anatomically, where is the lesion in these patients?
In the basal ganglia.
Where exactly is the problem? So we have caudate nucleus center point, then we have got subthalamic nucleus connected to thalamus, and there are interconnecting pathways. And whenever there is increased dopaminergic activity, a disruption of direct and indirect pathways leading to imbalance. So basal ganglion circuit is the site of issue, and probably because of some structural changes that is taking place over there, maybe because of ischemia, or there may be selective neuronal degeneration, or there may be some problem with the neurotransmission, may be related to the receptor blockage, or it may be metabolic derangements or autoimmune problems. So that's how it comes. So anatomically it is circuit problems, and that is the problem. So how do you classify chorea? Once you classify, it's easy for you to diagnose. So you can always say it is unilateral or bilateral. What's the importance of unilateral versus bilateral?
The site of the lesion.
That is one. Very good. If it is a genetic mediated transmitted disease, it is commonly bilateral.
Bilateral.
Acquired causes can be unilateral. What do you say about the age?
Age, young versus old.
Young person, you think Denham's chorea, neuroconjunctivitis, Wilson disease. Old person, you say senile chorea, Huntington disease, and so on. Vascular is very common. Onset, how does it help you?
Acute, it can be metabolic causes, or vascular causes, and subacute.
So acute and subacute occur in the acquired causes. Chronic is in the primary variety. So primary versus secondary. Primary is usually idiopathic. They are usually hereditary. They are bilateral. They are symmetrical. It starts insidiously. Versus secondary, there is a cause. It's acquired. It can be unilateral or bilateral, symmetrical or asymmetrical, but the onset is quite abrupt. Is it okay? So hereditary choreas. So what are the types of hereditary choreas you know of?
Huntington's chorea, Sydenham's chorea.
You can put it like that. Autosomal dominant type of choreas. What are they?
Huntington's chorea. Then
so degenerative causes come spinocerebellar ataxias and neuroferritinemia. What is neuroferritinemia?
In case of increased ferritin.
So autosomal dominant type of disease where you find the mutation occurring at the ferritin light chains, leading on to abnormal accumulation of this iron or ferritin in the basal ganglia, leading on to the symptoms. Now, autosomal recessive examples are
Acanthocytosis, Wilson's disease, ataxia telangiectasia.
Can you tell few lines about ataxia telangiectasia? What do you find? Commonly, they present as ataxia, and on examination of the skin, you may find areas of telangiectasia. X-linked recessive diseases, what are they?
Schleihan and McLeod.
Can you tell something about Leishman?
Storage disorder.
Yes. It is characterized by hyperuricemia, self-mutilation, chorioathetotic movements. Okay.
Yes, sir.
So it's the enzyme defect of the uric acid metabolism. What about McLeod syndrome? The spelling I have written here is wrong. Please correct it. There is no A. There is no A.
MC.
So MCLEOD. I'm sorry for spelling mistake. It's X-linked recessive type of genetic disorder that commonly affects the blood, brain, peripheral nerves, muscles, and heart. They present around the age of 50 years with neuropathy, cardiomegaly, and acute hemolytic anemias. And there is another entity called MACLEOD. What is that? It's a different syndrome characterized by unilateral emphysema. It's a respiratory condition. Please note that hereditary chorias can be because of maternal inheritance. Mitochondrial disease are also well known to produce chorias. Now, coming to the acute causes of choria.
Vascular. It can be
old age vascular. Yes. Then
autoimmune. Then paraneoplastic.
Okay. Paraneoplastic is well documented. Yes.
Immune mediated.
Immune mediated is there. Rheumatic fever is not an example.
Metabolic.
Calcium deficiency, excess, sodium deficiency, potassium deficiency, magnesium deficiency, excess, all can produce. All electrolyte imbalances are well known to produce choria. So that is then
endocrine problems like in
what endocrine problem?
In diabetes mellitus. Then
thyrotoxicosis is a classical example.
Thyrotoxicosis.
Okay, metabolic you can add hypoglycemia and diabetic state. Metabolic can also add sodium problems and magnesium problems and calcium problems. Okay, then we have got infections. Name some infections which can present like this. Please remember, in metabolic cause we have got a renal disease which improves with dialysis, and we have got acute liver diseases can also produce sometimes choria. So infections. Any infection that comes near these basal ganglia is acute.
Toxoplasmosis.
Very good. Toxoplasmosis, syphilis, tuberculosis, meningitis of different types, encephalitis, Lyme disease, fungus infections, prion diseases, and particularly HIV infection can be one predisposing factor. Toxins. What do you think about toxins? Carbon monoxide poisoning, manganese poisoning, thallium. They are all known to produce this. Coming to the drugs, name few drugs that can produce problem.
The dopaminergic drugs, dopamine agonists.
That's right. Commonly used for the treatment of Parkinson's disease. Levodopa is a classical example. Dopa blocking drugs like amantadine, anticholinergics. Dopamine depleting drugs like reserpine, tetrabenazine. Anticonvulsants like carbamazepine, gabapentin, calcium blockers like cinnarizine, flunarizine, verapamil, CNS stimulants, particularly youngsters using for recreational purposes, namely cocaine, amphetamines, can all produce a wide varieties of causes for choria. You have to classify and get it done and analyze in different fashions and see what are the causes. It's not easy job. It may be difficult sometimes. You may not find cause at all. Drug-induced choria, as you already correctly said, there are so many things. So what are the investigations you do in these patients? In the case choria, some of the things you already mentioned. Summarizing the investigations, you can do a hemogram, no?
Yes, sir. We will do.
Yes.
We will do one hemogram, sir, and also will electrolytes. We will look for electrolytes for any electrolyte person.
Particularly sodium, magnesium,
Sodium,
calcium.
magnesium, calcium,
You have to
and
check for the
water.
ABG. You have to look for the thyroid function, LFT, RFT. All must. Any other peripheral smear may show acanthocytes.
Canvases.
Then
And
RBS, blood glucose.
sir, ophthalmologic examination, Wilson's disease,
That's
for
right.
Wilson's.
That's
Then
right. Wilson workup, HIV workup, autoimmune workup, ANA workup for pregnancy test, simple SLE, everything needs to be worked up. Depending upon the scenario, you have to go ahead. Imaging, particularly we said there are different situations where imaging will be helpful. And coming to the chorea gait, can you describe the chorea gait? The classical gait of chorea. They walk with the jerking of the limbs, the abnormal posturing or lurching. That is the common pattern of their gait. So gait is very characteristic. Some choreas affect the upper limb dominantly. Some choreas affect the lower limb dominantly. Can you tell few choreas affecting upper limb? Huntington's disease, cerebral chorea dominantly affects upper limbs, whereas lower limb choreas are basically Sydenham's chorea and neuroacanthocytosis type of choreas. Now, what is by neuro impersistence? Impersistence.
There will be
motor manifestation, motor power is not persistent. That means if you ask the patient to squeeze your fingers, it keeps on relaxing and pressing as if you are milking a cow.
Oh.
So this is called as milk maid sign. Similarly, when there is impersistence, children drop objects on the floor. Teachers and the parents may get angry with them without knowing what's happening.
Oh.
Again, when you ask them to stick out the tongue, the impersistence gives jack in the pot, comes out, goes in, comes out, goes in. That's how it happens. So, neuro impersistence can be there. Now tell me, how do you examine a patient with the chorea? What all things you specifically look for?
We will see whether it is bilateral or unilateral.
Very good. You look at higher functions, you get a clue to Huntington's disease. Look for carefree, you get a clue to Wilson's disease. Look for chronic liver disease signs or chronic kidney disease signs, you get clue. The patient has Parkinson's features, you think about the drugs producing the problem. If you think it's a malar rash, you will think of SLE. If the eyes are very red, splenomegaly is there, you think it can be polycythemia. No? If the thyrotoxic signs, you can easily see. So, it's a very, very easy job to do a clinical examination with a view to find out the cause, and then they can be treated very easily. Now come to the last question. What is meant by edentulous dyskinesia? Edentulous means no teeth. So when people don't have teeth, an ill-fitting denture is kept. They keep on moving their face. They keep on grimacing as if they are just chewing and so on. So that is called as edentulous type of dyskinesia, and it can be a mimicry of any other type of diabetes. Since it is a COVID season, I will ask you one question regarding COVID and diabetes. What all things you know about COVID and diabetes? What are the connections? You would have seen many cases of COVID, am I right? One, the chance of becoming very severe diabetic is there. 2, more chance for type 2 diabetic patients to catch hold of COVID. 3, the mortality of COVID in diabetic patients is very high, up to 28% reported. Additional comorbidities, again the risk is increasing.
Yes.
Some of these patients for the first time, diabetes is precipitated by COVID.
Yes.
There's something called as inflammatory syndrome in relation to COVID.
Yes.
In that scenario, oral hypoglycemic agents will not work. They become insulin resistant and you have to go for insulin.
Yes.
And when they are having anorexia and you have to start insulin at that stage and stop SGLT inhibitors and sulfonylureas, and the treatment modality temporarily gets altered. Is it okay?
Yes.
Any doubt, please ask. Do you have any doubts or problems about this case?